Okay everyone, today I'm going to show you how to play the intro to Jimi Hendrix's version of Killing Floor that he opens with at the Monterey Pop Festival. Before I begin, let me just apologize for the clickbait title now that you're here. Obviously claiming this to be exact is a little bit bold. There's a lot going on, it's played really fast, and every time I listen to it still I notice something else. But at this point I think I have it pretty close, and what I can show you today is at least a little bit more than a gist of what he's doing. You'll also notice later that I've tabbed this out for you, but to be honest, it's more of a guide. There's just too many intricacies for me to tab out, and I think you'll do better just to listen and follow along. Also, quick note, like most, if not all Hendrix songs, you'll need to tune a half step down. So let's get into it. Okay, so we're going to begin by taking our index finger, moving it over to the 5th fret, and placing it on the D string, like so. And then we're going to hammer on to the 7th fret. Now here I recommend that you hammer on with your pinky, say opposed to your ring finger, because that's going to free up your ring finger to place it over the A string to lightly mute it. And you're going to want to do that because when you're striking the first note here, you're not just striking the D string in isolation, you're actually taking a pretty broad strum with your strumming hand and hitting all the other strings around it while they're muted. And that's going to be a common theme throughout this entire piece. You never really hit any note or series of notes in isolation. You're always strumming all the strings, and the ones that you aren't actually fretting, they're going to be muted. I use my thumb just rolled over the neck a little bit, resting over the low E string to keep it muted, and then the inside of your index finger is pretty much going to take care of the strings above the D string. So it's not... Okay, it's like so. And then you follow that up with 2 muted strums. And then pull off from the 7th fret, D string, to the 5th. And then we move on over to the 8th fret, low E string. Play that once. And then we go on over back to the D string, 7th fret. I use my middle finger for this. Okay, I positioned this so that the tip of my middle finger is just slightly touching the A string to keep it muted. So we got... And then we immediately go into the low E string at the 5th fret, and I use my thumb to press this. So slowly we have... Okay, and then we sort of repeat a similar pattern here. We're still at the 5th fret, D string, index finger, but you're also now going to use that finger to press down on the G string as well. We're going to form a bar chord, and then we're hammering on to the 7th fret using our ring finger and pinky, and it's going to sound like this. Okay. So we have a bar chord at the 5th and a bar chord at the 7th, and this shows up a lot in this intro. So going forward, I'm just going to refer to it as the bar chord at the 5th and the bar chord at the 7th. Another thing you want to be aware of is that you want to be a little bit particular with the positioning of your index finger. I am positioning it in such a way so that the tip of the finger is, again, still touching the A string, keeping it muted. But you also want to play around with it so that you're pressing down on the D and G strings, but not the B and the low E strings. You want to keep those muted. And still, my thumb is muting the low E string. So you're going to hammer on, pull off immediately, then strike the bar chord at the 5th fret once more for emphasis. So slowly is what we have. We follow that up with 2 muted strums. Then now we're back to the 8th fret, low E string. Now the 7th fret, D string. 2 muted strums, and then we strike the bar chord at the 7th twice. So I'd like to call that part 1, and if you combine what we played so far and play through it slowly, it'll sound like... Okay, obviously it doesn't sound like the recording at this speed, but if you practice it, speed it up, you can make it sound like. Okay, so now we're moving on to the next part. It's around this time of the recording that I start to hear that open A string make its appearance and create the background rhythm. It goes like. And for me to show you what's going on there, I think it'll be easier for me to just first keep the A string muted, show you the notes going around on top of it, and then go back and show you how to add the A string. There's not much to it. It starts with the bar chord, again at the 5th fret, and then we move on over to the D string. So like the bar chord, and then at the 7th fret D string. Then we follow that up with a couple more muted strums. We strike the bar chord at the 7th and at the 5th. It's not a pull off, we strike the notes. Okay, so you play through that, and slowly it sounds like. And to add the A string, there's not much to it. You just don't keep it muted. You leave it open. I keep the D, G, B, and the low E string muted with the underside of my fingers here. I keep the low E string muted with my thumb, so it sounds like that type of thing. So instead of doing, you now have, and instead of, you now have. All right, moving along, the next part goes like so. Okay, I'm going to break this down for you. There's a little bit going on here. The beginning of this part sounds like this. You hit the open A string and the low E string, creating this drag, and you go right into the bar chord at the 7th fret, and you bend it up a bit. So, followed by 2 muted strums, bar chord at the 7th bent again, and land on the bar chord at the 5th. So slowly is what's going on there. So this shows up a couple times in the next little part here, so I'm just going to call that riff A for ease of reference. And once you play riff A, you follow that up with this quick turnaround. It all happens on the D string from the 5th fret to the 7th, like. So we have, and is how it sounds played slowly. And you repeat that riff A, and this time the turnaround is played on the low E string. You open up with the low E, and you land on the 5th fret. Still, I like to use my thumb for this and play the following. So. Okay, and that's continuing on to a repetition of riff A. And this next part, it's not as obvious, but what I do here is I place my finger on the D string 5th fret, strike the open A and E, and do like a little bit of a combination here where I press down on the 7th fret D string and the low E string 5th fret while playing the open A string. Okay, so it's 3 successions of riff A, and in between are these quick turnarounds. So I'll play that for you slowly. Alright, Alright, so we're getting near the end here, and near the end there's this cool build-up. It goes like so. Okay, so let's break that down. The first part is more or less of the same as that we've previously seen, going back between the 7th and the 5th, and the 5th and 7th on the D string. Here, we're actually going to be starting on the 7th fret, however, and this is what it sounds like without the A string. Okay, like I said, more or less of the same. We're just going back between the 5th and 7th on the D string, but we're starting on the 7th, and we're keeping now we're going to incorporate the A string played openly. So. Okay, we do that and we get into the really cool part, but also fairly intricate, that goes like. And what's going on there is that we're pressing down on the low E string at the 5th fret, and then we're going into the bar chord at the 5th fret. Okay, and then we're going back between the 5th and 7th fret with the open A string. Slowly. Notice this is a pretty tight riff and rhythm here. You're not really letting things ring out other than the open A string. So when you press down on the low E string at the 5th fret, you're going to release and keep that muted before going into the bar chord at the 5th, like so. And once you do the little back and forth, you're going to go start the riff over again. And as you're pressing down on the 5th fret on the low E string, if you roll your thumb forward over enough, you can actually mute that open A string and repeat. Okay? Okay, and once you play through that about, I think, eight times or so, you're now at the finale, or transition, from the intro, and it goes like. Okay, and what's going on here is that there's a succession of 3 notes that start at the low E string 5th fret, now onto the 8th fret, now onto the A string 5th fret, 6th fret, and the chord. And this chord you play with your ring finger, 7th fret A string, right? And then you go to the D string with your middle finger at the 6th fret, and you use your pinky to press down on the G string at the 7th fret, and finally you use your index finger to press down on the B string at the 5th fret. Okay? And there you have it. That's the intro. And what comes after the actual song, I suppose, goes like. Or something like that. And that part is much more straightforward. And the last time I checked, there were a number of videos already on YouTube showing you how to play that part fairly accurately, so I won't waste your time with that here. Last thing, I suppose if you wanted to compare this to the original recording, I noticed that whenever the original video is uploaded on YouTube, at least, it gets taken down pretty quickly. I think if you Google the original video, you know, Jimi Hendrix, Monterey, Killing Floor, you can still find it on some other website. But yeah, otherwise, that's it for now. If you have questions or comments, you know where to leave them.